I am so pumped to have on this episode of 10 Questions with the Hockey Think Tank, Coach George Gwozdecky out in the Colorado area right now, Coach Rico Blasi, who's out in Ohio. Coach Blasi played for Coach Gwoz. You guys coached together, coached against each other, a lot of history there. So thank you guys for coming on today.
Topher, my pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
All right, you bet. All right, I'm going to start with the senior member here, Coach Gwoz. And like I said, you were able to coach Rico at Miami for his years that he was there. So I'll throw you right in the fire right now. What was like coaching Coach Blasi when he was a young buck?
I remember vividly his team that he played on. Team out of Wexford, Ontario, and the Wexford Raiders. Stan Butler was their coach, and they were a powerhouse back in those days. And a lot of good players came out of the Wexford organization to move on to college hockey. And I remember back at my final year as an assistant coach for Ron Mason, Michigan State. We were recruiting a number of players from Wexford. Rico was on that team, but how do I say this and be nice? There were some players on his team that were kind of more high profile, more marquee players, if you will. Rico was the guy that, as I look back, made the high profile guys look good. You know, he was the much shorter guy. He was the buzzsaw. He would be flying around. He would be creating stuff. He was the energy guy. Whereas some of his teammates, who they looked like they were going to be, they could be big time players because of their height and their reach and their skill level. Not that Rico didn't have that, but you know, when compared to their size, he was I don't want to say a water bug, but I mean, he was smaller, shorter. So even us at Michigan State, you know, we knew about Rico, but you know, we weren't sure if he's going to be big enough to be able to play college hockey. Whereas that guy and that guy and that guy, you know, there's no question. And the coach, you know, their coach helped us to be able to direct certain guys, and so we were really focused on some of Rico's teammates. That my final year at Michigan State, and then I go to Miami and try to help continue to build the program at Miami, and we weren't in a real good situation there as far as our success rate is concerned. But you know, the one guy that always stuck, I mean, we needed some building blocks. We needed guys that we could build a foundation on for our program at Miami. And one of the first guys that I thought of when I took over the job at Miami was that buzzsaw, that water bug with the Wexford Raiders. And, you know, the other players like Kelly Harper and all those guys were going to go to Michigan State, the high profile schools, the schools that everybody wanted to go to. But, you know, I wasn't sure how many opportunities a guy like Rico Blasi would get, but I watched Blasi enough to know that there are certain things that he had in him as a player and as a person that could really help a program like ours. And, you know, I knew he wanted to go play college hockey. And certainly the first time I talked to him about Miami, or maybe he reached out and talked to me about Miami, was there's no question that he wanted, you know, I think I was in the same boat as a collegiate athlete. I wasn't very big. And, you know, you have to have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder to show those people who don't really believe in you that you're going to get this done. And so that's my first real memory of Rico in the sense of recruiting him, um, and bringing him to Miami, and the struggles that he and his recruiting class had as freshmen, and maybe the worst season ever as far as a record is concerned at Miami was Rico's freshman year, where I think we won 4 games or 6 games all season long. And I remember our strength and conditioning coach, the Monday after the season was done, he came up to me and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that, I know you guys finished on Saturday night, but we had I was down in our weight room earlier this morning, and there was 3 or 4 guys, freshmen, from your hockey team in the weight room demanding me to train them because they never wanted to have happen what happened this year to them or their teammates again." And I said, "Okay, we got something here. We got something here." Rico was part of that group, was part of that training session that day. And I'll never forget that, because from that point on, things went straight north, and in a good way for us. And obviously the rest is history. But that foundation piece, that cornerstone that we needed was Rico, and certainly a number of guys in his class.
That's an awesome story. That's really cool. I can imagine, having been a coach, how proud you were to know that you had guys like that in your program, and just seeing the future of where it was going to go. And I'll flip this to you, Rico, now. My next question was, what was it like to play for Coach Gwoz here? But I also want to ask you too, like, what after hearing Coach talk about the process and evaluating you as a player and the chip on your shoulder, how do you kind of respond to that as well? I mean, I know, having been a smaller player as well, what that is like, but hearing your coach talk about it now, what are you thinking about how that whole process ensued?
Well, he remembers it quite well. I'm actually kind of surprised. Um, but we did have good teams in Toronto, and I was always, as Toph, you and I've talked about many times, the smaller guy on the team, and but I never ever thought that. I never played thinking I was the small guy. Um, but there was that sense of, kind of to prove yourself at a certain level. I'm a first generation Italian, so my parents came from Italy with nothing, and it was kind of the culture in an Italian household to, to work hard, be a good person, and prove yourself, and
Eat well.
eat well. Um, so to me, it was part of what um, my upbringing was, and we had no choice. This is the way you were going to do it. Um, and I was lucky to have Stan Butler as a coach that kind of let me be who I was. He was talk about a coach that pushed you and was a tough coach to play for. He was definitely one of those guys. Um, but in the recruiting process with Coach, um, it was important to me to play for somebody that that I believed in, somebody that had a vision, someone that my parents felt like if they're going to send little Rico 8 hours away, that they could trust. And those things came out the first time we ever talked. Coach came over to the house with one of his assistants at the time, Mike Norton, and it was, I think my grandfather had a plan to get them both drunk to see if they could handle it. Of course, Coach was very professional and first class, and let Mike Norton drink all the wine. But very shortly after that, I had a conversation with my parents, and there was no doubt in our household who I was going to play for after meeting all the coaches that I was fortunate enough to be recruited by. Not that the other coaches weren't good, but there was just something about George that really hit home with all of us. So That first year at Miami was not fun, let me tell you. We went through a lot of heartaches, and but again, we believed in what Coach was preaching. We believed in his vision, um, and it was up to us to make sure that we did our part, and so we matched up his uh, the way he wanted the culture to be, and you know, fortunate for us, we had some good players. And 2 years later, we won the league. That to this day is still the most memorable moment of my probably playing career.
Very cool.
Yeah, I still get choked up in thinking about that, because that is, of all the things, all the games that I've coached, and all the players that I've coached, and all the uh, championships, I shouldn't say all the, but the championships that we've won, um, that season still probably, not probably, that season where we won the league title and how we did it is probably the most impactful memory that I'll take to my grave. And I still get choked up about it. I still get shivers every time I think about it, and every time it's brought up, because it was so, to consider where we had been 2 years earlier on that Monday in the weight room that I was told that Rico and some of the guys were there training, thinking, 2 days earlier before that, thankfully finishing the worst season I had ever had as a coach, and me second guessing myself. Is this really what I want to do? Am I good enough to be able to be a coach at this level? Do I know what I'm doing? To 2 years later, um, watching the kids celebrate in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, against Lake Superior, who was a powerhouse at the time, and we have to get a point in that game, and we tie them in overtime. I remember heading back to that scene, and the scene from the movie Miracle, where Herb Brooks, late in the movie, Herb leaves the bench after they've beaten the Russians. Everything, all hell's breaking loose on the ice with the team celebrating. He goes back in the hallway, gets down on his haunches, and just kind of buries his head. That was my feeling that night. And it's still, as you can probably tell, it's still emotional to me. But Rico and his teammates were the cornerstone behind that, were the foundation behind that, were the reason that Miami, became a program that people could be really proud of, that players wanted to go to, and it's still a vivid memory for me, and one of my proudest moments in my coaching career, if not my proudest moment in my coaching career.
So if that story of Coach, uh, I was always the guy in the locker room that was slow at getting changed, and so I was one of the last guys in the locker room. I remember being in that locker room in Sault Ste. Marie, and one of the last guys, and Coach sitting in the locker room with the 2 or 3 guys that were left, and doing exactly that, like shaking his head, like, my God, this is incredible. And really, to me, that kind of solidified in my mind, now looking back as we get older and we get a little bit wiser, I guess, um, why I wanted to become a coach, because I saw the person that I wanted to play for 3 years earlier. I actually saw the humility and the impact that he had on us as players beyond hockey. And it's a memory that I will never forget. And it's been with me throughout my coaching career to this point, and will continue to be, as Coach said, to our grave. But you always kind of want to circle back and you think about decisions that you made as a young person and why you made them. Um, and I can tell you that as a family, to this day, it was one of the best decisions we ever made to play for George Gwozdecky.
I'm like getting chills right now, guys. I don't know about you, but this is really
I
cool.
brought my tissue because I knew Coach gets emotional now. When he goes,
That's good. That's good. Well, let me ask you guys this. Like, I I love to ask questions about teams that do what you did that year. Like, what is the DNA? What is the makeup of just special teams? Because we've all been a part of them as players. We've all been a part of them as coaches. And I feel like there's similarities with every special team that I've been on, whether it was a player or a coach, and there aren't many. But in talking with so many people, what maybe Rico, I'll start with you from a playing standpoint. Like that specific year where you guys did it, what were if you can give me like 2 or 3 ingredients or 2 or 3 reasons why that was a magical season for you guys, what
well,
would you say that it was?
yeah, I think the blueprint for winning is not unusual to any championship team. You need, obviously, you have to have some good players. You have to have a belief in each other, a closeness, a culture that is uh, not based on individual goals, but the goals of the collective team. You've got to you got to have good leadership. I think the leadership in the locker room is very important because the coaching staff can't be there every minute of the day. And when coach leaves the room, you got to have somebody continually uh, making sure that the message has been heard and guys are held accountable. And as a player that there's no better way to hold anybody accountable than from your peer. And as much as us as coaches want to be able to do that, you have to have the guys in the locker room that are able to do that. So to me, it's creating the culture in the locker room, the leadership, the followers, not just the leaders, but the followers need to believe in what's going on. The work ethic has to be there. I think, looking back on that Miami team, the first thing that we did, it was establish that work ethic. I think good old hard work brings people together, and you go through times, difficult times, put people in uncomfortable situations, and all of a sudden you become a little bit closer, and you go through things that um, maybe some other teams don't go through. Not to say that you wouldn't be successful, but it really is part of the blueprint of having a championship team.
And I will, from my standpoint, there are a lot of things that Rico and his teammates had no clue about what was going on. They're 18, 19, 20 years old. They don't know what's going on behind the scenes in the athletic department or the plans. I mean, first of all, I found out after the fact that hiring me was the last chance for hockey at Miami. It was an expensive sport. It was a sport that was popular on campus, but when you're the doormat of the CCHA for the entire for so many years that they had been members of the CCHA, and football and basketball, Miami being big sports, the hockey program was a drain on the athletic budget, and there were those in the athletic administration and on the board who were saying, "Okay, we're going to give it one last shot, and we're going to see if this can happen." But the naysayers are saying, "Okay, Miami's the farthest university from that Canadian border that has hockey. Every good player from the north has to fly past all these other schools or travel past all these other hockey playing schools before they get to Miami University. We don't think it can happen." Um, the other thing that these guys, and I remember vividly, is that coming from Michigan State, we had so much facilities and budget and you name it. We had everything a collegiate athlete would need and a coaching staff would need to be successful. At Miami, we're on the exact opposite side of the spectrum. Um, we didn't have it in our budget to travel on Thursday nights or to leave on Thursdays. We would leave except for uh, except for the series up at Lake Superior State University. We would have to, we would leave on a Friday morning because we only had the budget for one night of hotel. So we'd leave Friday morning or Friday noon and travel to East Lansing or Ann Arbor or Kalamazoo or Chicago, because UIC was still a program at the time, or Kent or wherever we were going, Big Rapids, and check into the hotel late in the afternoon, go to the rink, play our game, and then come back after the game Saturday night. We never ever had the luxury of going up there and skating on a Friday, getting to the hotel on Thursday afternoon, and because we just didn't have it in the budget. At least I was told we didn't have to have it in the budget. I found out later on that money was going somewhere else outside of the hockey program. The term brotherhood was coined, as far as college hockey is concerned, was coined during Rico's time, and we were all part of those initial meetings, those mission state meetings and goals meetings, where that term was something that the boys, the players decided, the leadership decided on the team that this is what we're going to be known as. We don't have as much as pretty much anybody we play against. I mean, even UIC and Kent State, there was the perception that they had more than us, and I think part of that was used to be able to not only define us. We wanted to define ourselves as we had the least, but we're going to make the most of what we have. We don't have the best of everything, but we're going to make the best of everything we have. And certainly, that leadership, strong leadership that we had on those teams, were young guys who knew that if they played hard together, if they worked hard together, they could accomplish an awful lot. And certainly, despite great odds, they overcame those odds and were hugely successful. But certainly I think one of the great magic tricks that we were able to do was to be able to use that lack of resources that we had, to be able to say to the guys, hey, we don't have the budget to be able to leave on a Thursday afternoon to go to Kalamazoo, but you know what? In my experience at Michigan State, that usually gets you tired. We want to be fresh off the bus to go into the locker room and play. We'll be better that way. And I'm going, I can't believe these guys.
By the way, Toph, we were onto that.
I can't believe they bought that. I can't believe they bought that. So, yeah, that was a very, very special group. But certainly the character of those young guys was crucial and critical for the success of the program.
Yeah, that's unreal. And you mentioned the brotherhood there, Coach, and something that you guys started as a coach there, and then Rico, you kind of took it and it became a life of its own in your time as the head coach at Miami. And having been there for a year and lived it and breathed it, I certainly understand how special that is and was when you guys were a part of it. How do you define the Brotherhood, and what is so special about the Brotherhood that when you're a part of it, it's just such a cool thing to be a part of?
Well, I think first and foremost is, as you experienced, it's what's in the locker room. It's the love for each other. It's the um, the ability to share each other's goals and live each other's dreams, and just be the best version of yourself each and every day. And if everybody's doing that, um, then the team is going to improve. You're going to improve, and it really is a roadmap more than anything. Um, it's not this huge, you know, secret out there. It's just being a good person and living the culture to its fullest. Whether that's going to class, having good relationships, not only with your teammates but with your professors, your girlfriends, your parents, your brothers, your sisters, your friends, but just being a good person. And um, Coach knows this because we had the same athletic director at Denver, and I was fortunate enough to work for him here at Miami. But good things happen to good people, and if you can just continue to focus on that, you know, things were going to happen. So it wasn't really anything earth-shattering, other than just to everybody believing in each other and becoming one and a huge family. And like Coach said, we had a mission statement, the Brotherhood, when we played. And uh, as things started to evolve, we wanted to define it, and I wanted the players to define that. But a lot of what Coach instilled in us when we were players, and then obviously me working for him, were things that I tried to model, try to um, instill in our players, so that when they had the opportunity to define what the Miami Brotherhood was all about, they were able to go back into their minds and remember the things that they learned along the way. Because we, as you know, Toph, we didn't define that till 5 years into our tenure at Miami. And it's funny, Coach talks about in 1989 when he was told that he was the last chance for Miami. It's when I was hired in 99, 10 years later, the Miami hockey program was then again on the chopping blocks. And I was number 6 in line at 27. And if it wasn't for George and Joel Maturi, I probably would have never gotten the job. But because nobody else wanted it, because it was on the chopping blocks, um, the whole history kind of repeated itself again. And so the things that I had learned from George from playing for him and working for him were now back on the docket at Miami, and that's how we built our program.
The as Rico talks, and it reminds me of two things. First of all, I think the very first year that we as a team established a team mission statement, where the Brotherhood was brought into it. The mission statement was respect all, fear none. And I thought at the time, boy, that's pretty cool, especially for Miami, that had been the doormat of the league. And that term, fear none, respect all, fear none, I thought that was outstanding. That's how these kids, and that's how the team played. One of the traditions that we established that became very politically incorrect was we want a friend of mine had said, hey, George, and you're trying to do some of these things, and you know how FSU, Florida State, has their Seminole, and he throws that spear into the ground when he rides in on the horse, and then at the end of the game, if they have a big win on the road, they will dig up a little bit of the turf of the field they just won on, and they'll take it back to Tallahassee and put it in their locker room in safekeeping. And I thought, that's sounds corny, but maybe we could do something like that with us when we win a big game on the road, and or if we maybe if we sweep. I forget what it was but anyway, I'll never forget the first time we won I think we probably swept. I think it was, we would take the technique, the procedure was after the Saturday night game, and we had won both games on the road. We would assemble after we had both teams shook hands and the home team left the ice. We would go back to the middle of the ice as a group and get in a big huddle and scrape up a bunch of ice. And then our captain would collect that ice, that big snowball, and bring it to the locker room. And it would be transferred into a little container after it melted and brought back to our locker room back at Miami. And that was something that I always felt that the players really loved, that because the sense of accomplishment of what they just did. I mean, it was unheard of for Miami to win a game on the road, let alone sweep a series on the road, let alone at Michigan State or at Western or Lake Superior. And yet, that lasted for a few years. A couple of years after I had left, that became a practice that was prohibited by the CCHA because of, I think, what occurred. All those little things, I think, helped develop this unique type of camaraderie and this unique sense of togetherness for that group, for those teams.
Yeah, I feel like that camaraderie and togetherness is it's such an easy thing to talk about, but it's such a hard thing to accomplish, especially at the level that we're talking about, championship. Guys are in each other's weddings type level. I think that's a huge piece to what the Brotherhood was, and in the way that I interpreted a lot of what the Brotherhood was building that camaraderie and togetherness. So how do you guys, what do you think is really important in coming to develop that kind of thing? Because it's hard, and very few teams can get to that level of togetherness. So Rico, maybe I'll go back to you first. What's the I don't know, special sauce, but like, what do you think is really important when it comes to developing those kinds of things?
Well, I think it comes back down to recruiting, and we talk about character and care level, and I think those are two huge pieces to the puzzle. Obviously, we all want to recruit good hockey players, but there's a certain care level that is needed in order for you to have that culture in the locker room. And then once everything is, for us, you start to recruit to it. People start to believe in what you're sharing with them. No different than our family believed in what George was sharing with us and his vision on what a Miami could be, or what he could do for us as players and as human beings. The Brotherhood, you start to hire people that believed in it. You start to get volunteer assistants and graduate assistants like yourself that want to be part of it, that continue to push the evolution of what we're doing and the vision of what we're trying to accomplish. So I think it really comes down to the people. The Brotherhood is people. The Brotherhood is family. There's no big secret to it. It's a care level. It's a character level that needs to shine. That doesn't mean you don't have guys that are coming to your team that need that have to learn that, because we certainly had those guys. I can think of one of our best captains that we ever had at Miami. For the first 2 years, he fought me on all of it, the entire thing. It was almost like, my kids fighting me on Catholicism. Why do we do this? It was very much a part of him growing and learning how to grow in his own, his own self and his best version of himself. So he needed the Brotherhood for different reasons. There's other players that came to Miami that believed in it full-heartedly right off the bat, and that was great. Those were the easy guys. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the people. And as a coach, the one thing I learned from George was, you know, the ground level stuff is fun. That's the fun part of being a coach. But being at 20,000 feet and being the leader and being the program leader and the CEO of your program, those are the decisions that are difficult. And those are the things that the players never really see. I never certainly saw it when I played for him. I was able to see it when I worked for him because that's what he was teaching us. He was preparing us to be head coach. And that modeling, that everyday speech, if you will, where you're teaching not just about hockey, but about life, that's what makes our Brotherhood. And I say our Brotherhood because Coach was a big part of that. So it comes down to the people and the people believing in what you're doing and the vision, and that includes the administration, that includes the fans, that includes the alumni. I mean, this is all a collaboration of not just the people in the locker room, but everybody.
Excuse me. I couldn't agree with. I mean, I ditto. I couldn't agree more with what Rico just said. I think, to me, the biggest thing is the character of the individual, and certainly how that character has evolved. You know, it's the family background and to me, it's once a young guy has reached the age of 18 or 19, he's going to be a freshman in college. It's really tough to adjust his way of thinking. He's been raised a certain way by his parents, by his previous coaches, by his environment, and it's really difficult to change him, to get him to adjust. If he's not of the character that you want, hopefully you have a number of people that are going to surround him that will almost force him to adjust or to become what the coaches and his teammates want him to become. But there's no question that character and the kind of person that is willing to serve his teammates and be a good person and work hard and believe in team goals, that will help each individual far more in accomplishing individual goals. Those types of things really are huge in what a team is going to, if a team's going to succeed or not, and if they're going to be able to bond and become that kind of brotherhood that everybody wants to be part of.
I love that so much. And I love how much you guys talk about the players, and you guys have had the chance to coach some pretty amazing players in your guys' years. Coach, when we worked together with Andy Mealy, won the Hobey Baker that year. Coach Gwoz, you've had a ton of great players, Hobey Bakers as well. I think Matt Carl was a Hobey Baker when you were there, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you guys, having the chance to coach some of these players that have gone on to do some amazing things, what's it like coaching an elite player, a truly elite player? And what are some things that are important as a coach that you guys would do with those elite players, whether it was for a mindset thing, whether it was a skill set thing, whether it was a routine type thing? What's important when coaching kids of that level? Maybe Coach Gwoz, I'll start with you here.
Well, you mentioned Matt Carl because he was, during my time at Denver, he was our one and only Hobie Baker Award winner, and you know, Rick will agree that, you know, every good player, every great player is different. Matt was one of those guys that you didn't have to motivate him. He always seemed to have an understanding of what it took to do things the right way, whether it was in how he trained, how hard he worked, his focus, his concentration, his intellect, his mentality, how he played on the ice. He was a pretty easy player. As great as a player as he was a pretty easy player to coach. He was not a high maintenance guy at all. And he, now I will also say that as good as he was in all those areas, he probably wasn't a great captain or a great leader as far as being able to motivate others, to be able to be the supervisor. He took care of himself. I mean, his focus was on himself, not in a selfish way, but he just wanted to be the very best he could possibly be. You could see it in him. And in fact, the year he won the Hobie Baker was his junior year at DU. We had won national titles during his freshman year, during his sophomore year, and as a junior, we had a dual captains. He was one of those captains, and he and the other guy, Gabe Goche, really struggled in that role for a number of reasons. I don't think I did a very good job in helping them, but we didn't even make the national tournament that year when Matt was a junior. But he had such a phenomenal year, and the amount of work he'd put in over the course of 3 years was, I mean, he was a no-brainer as the best player in college hockey. And you know, so I remember being at the awards ceremony and being out at the Frozen Four with him when he was announced, and I'm thinking, okay, this is awesome for him and it's great for the program, but I sure would like to be playing in the Star and Frozen Four, you know. So there have been others who were great players who were also different in the sense that they would maybe they wanted to be great leaders, and so as a result kind of spread themselves too thin. They wanted to be everything to everybody on their team. They wanted to be such a great captain that they spent so much energy dealing with the freshman or the sophomore problem or the junior problem or what have you, and all of a sudden when it came time to play or to practice, they were tired, they were fatigued. And so it's that combination of knowing when to lead and when to just focus on what you need to do that I think really has helped some of our great captains and great leaders and great players accomplish an awful lot. It's tough.
That's so true. I can all probably think back to when we were players and going through that. When do I focus on myself? When do I focus on others? And being in the professions that we were in, we probably usually erred towards focusing on others, which it is what it is. But it's a great dichotomy of being a leader on a hockey team for sure. But Rico, how about you when it comes to the elite players? You know,
I think, yeah, I think you were on staff when we had some pretty good players, and I think the love for the game. You know, I think of Riley Smith. Always had a smile on his face. Was first guy on the ice, last guy off the ice. Just never really had to tell him very much. You know, you just let him play. You kind of let him be who he is, and you know, you stay on him in terms of things that you know, in terms of the team game. But at the end of the day, you don't want to stifle any of those guys because they're special for obvious reasons, and they're there for obvious reasons. And then on the flip side, there's always the superstar that is a little bit different, wanted to know everything. I don't want to call them high maintenance because they really weren't. They just wanted to be involved. That kind of drove them to be even better on a day-to-day perspective. So I think the underlining theme, and I think Coach said it right off the bat, just the sheer love, the hockey sense, the ability to just continue to improve every day because that's just what they want to do. And you can see it in their eyes. It was something that, and as a young coach, I had to learn. And I can remember one story with George on the bench, and I think it might have been my first year. And we had some pretty good talent in Denver at the time. And for whatever reason, we weren't playing really well, and our superstars were not doing what I thought they should be doing. So I walked down from the defensive end of the bench, and I said to Coach, I said, "Why don't you just sit him?" And he looked at me and he started laughing. He said, "You never sit your superstars because they could change the game in one shift." And he's right. And I took that, not that we didn't hold the guys accountable, but those are the guys that make you, and you got to give them the opportunity to be out there and just do what they do. And
I said that. Boy, was I wrong.
yeah.
You remember that?
And so then so then I whisper in his ear, I said, "Well, you didn't do that with me."
That's so good. I hear you tell that story, and then I remember that day when we were coaching at Michigan State, and you sat 4 of our best players, and we played with not even – what did we play with, 16 guys, 17 guys?
Well, if you remember, Toph, we did sit 4 of our best players, but we had 6 other best players that still played.
That is very true.
We kind of hedged our bet a little bit.
Did you ever tell Coach that story?
Coach for me was the moment I got the job at Miami was on speed dial. So I don't know, probably twice a week, Coach, maybe once a week for sure. There might have been weeks where we spoke every day, but he pretty much knew what I was trying to accomplish at Miami, and I was feeding off his success at Denver and trying to emulate everything that they were doing, and hopefully bring it to our program and in some way fit what our guys were like. We weren't trying to beat Denver by any means. The talent level that he had in the back-to-back national championships was something that we were aspiring to be further down the road. But so I'm sure he doesn't remember, but we were upset because we lost to Michigan State. Topher, being a good assistant, said, "Let's just sit the whole team." And we decided to sit 5 or 6 guys. I remember Topher and I went out for a warm-up. I don't know if you remember this at Michigan State, but all of a sudden we're playing with 3 lines, 5 defensemen, and the warm-up looked very bare on our side of the rink. And the Michigan State guys were passing the puck back and forth, looking down at the ice going, "Where's everybody? Where are the Miami players? Are they going to play tonight, or what's going on?" I looked at Topher, I said, "No chance they beat us tonight. They're too consumed with what we're doing." And luckily enough, we had Andy Mealy and Carter Camper and Riley Smith on the ice every other shift, so that they loved it. They thought we could do it every week.
It's funny you mentioned the way you mentioned that, because I remember another time during that year we played against Notre Dame at home, and the Friday night game wasn't a very good game. I think we lost and didn't play very well. So the next day in morning skate, we just had a battle day. Just a battle day on a Saturday right before the game. And I remember looking, because they were dressed and they were watching the skate. You could see it in their eyes, like, oh boy. We won that game in that morning skate, and I think we came out that night and waxed them, and it was very interesting, very fun stories, especially as a first-year coach coming in, doing some of those bold things. It was a good learning experience for me.
It was fun. I like the word wax. I like that.
Well, Wexford wax.
Waxing Notre Dame. I like that. That's good.
That's good. Well, I want to move to another question with you guys, because you guys both got the chance to coach.
How many more questions we got?
Well, you like to talk a lot, so
no
We might
kidding.
not get to our 10.
I've always been accused of that. Yeah. I know. I apologize.
When I had you on my podcast, you were saying that right from the get-go. You were like, I'm probably going to go for a while here, but I loved it. So I actually have 2 more, if that's okay. You got time?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. So you guys had the chance to coach at universities for a long time, long time, long tenured coaches there. And that's not an easy thing to do. Coming from coaching in college, I was only there for 6 years as a whole, but to have that longevity, I think, is something that's incredibly special. And so I wanted to ask you guys, like, what's the most rewarding thing about being able to coach at one place for such a long time? But at the same time, what were maybe some of the challenges to try and be consistent on a year-to-year basis where you were able to build that program and keep it at the heights that it were for such a long amount of time? Coach, I'll start with you with this one.
You want to start with me?
Which coach?
Oh, sorry, you're both coaches. I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
Coach Gwoz, I'll start with you.
One of the great things about coaching for an extended period of time at one institution is, and I hate to sound, because I think this is going to sound, I don't want to say corny, but it's going to sound like it's a canned answer. But when you get a chance to be able to be there as long as I was at Denver, or as long as Rico was at Miami, the relationships that you establish, not only amongst, within your program, but within the athletic department and within the school and within the community, those are the things that I treasure and I cherish to this day. And when that's taken away from you, there's angst and there's anger and there's some bitterness. But certainly, those relationships continue, even though you're no longer part. You no longer remain with that group. I wasn't at Miami as long as I was at Denver, but certainly in my 5 years at Miami, some of those relationships that I was fortunate enough to be able to establish still are part of me and my family. And I'm not talking about the players. I'm talking about the coaches. I'm talking about, people in the administration, people in the community. Like anything, you don't talk with these people, you don't see them for years, and all of a sudden, you talk with them and then you just pick up from where you left off. So to me, that's always one of the most important things that one of the most joyful things that I have in, when I think back to those times. And certainly there's always the naysayers within any institution, within any administration, that it's tough to work with those people. It's tough to get them to understand, why you're doing things. And I know in my, not so much Miami, but in my 19 years at Denver, myself and Steve Miller and Seth Appert, Rico was with us for a little bit, and our staff, really proud of the consistency that our teams had. I look back and there's certain things that I probably, would do differently with some of those teams to be able to maybe give us a little bit more oomph to kind of get us past an opponent or get us a little bit deeper into the tournament. But certainly the consistency of our program over the years, from year to year, to be able to be, maybe not win the WCHA every year, but to be in the national tournament every year, to have 20 wins every year, and not be scheduling the patsies, scheduling a tough non-conference schedule along with our conference schedule. I mean, I think that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of, is the consistency that we had in the times, once we got it going. Those first few years at DU were really difficult and tough, as Rico remembers. But once we got it going, to be able to keep it at that level of competitiveness, I'm really proud of.
That's amazing. And Rico, how about you? Just, the rewards of being able to, and especially at your alma mater too, being able to be there for so long, but also the challenges of trying to keep that consistency as Coach was talking about. What would you say to that question?
Well, I think, again, Coach said it very well. The relationships that you make over 20 years, it really becomes part of you. And when it was taken away, it really, there was a sort of a death in the family, if you will. And but those relationships and those experiences, I would not trade them for anything. In terms of trying to hit that consistency every year was a goal of ours. I was told when I was hired to win once every 4 years and you're going to keep your job. And I'm thinking, one every 4 years? What? Oh, that doesn't make any sense to me. We want to win every year. And so to me, evolving and making it fresh for every team and treating every team like that was your first team, that they were special, not so much talking about what happened in the past, but making them feel like this is it, was very important to me and our staff. And I think that, whether we did a team building exercise one year, we didn't do that again. We tried to come up with something fresh. We tried to come up with something that they could identify with, that group could be special in their own way. So to me, those are things that you do. And yeah, you look back and, there's certain things you might have done differently. And, for us at Miami, we didn't have the success that Coach had at Denver, but to go to 10 national tournaments, knowing the program had only been to 2 before that in 25 years, that's pretty good success. To build the brand that we had built, very proud of that, and what the players were able to accomplish, and what the community really backing us up and were able to embrace us and the vision that we had. So, but it does boil down to the relationships. And, having taken the year off and kind of been, the guy that observes everything from the outside, the interesting part for me was, and I think we kind of talked about it at the beginning, not so much the guys you expected to call and to kind of check in, if you will, but the guys that you didn't expect. And on the flip side, the guys you expected to, check in, didn't check in. So life has a way to give you some different surprises along the way, and embracing those and not taking things for granted is really kind of the key to moving forward.
Well, Topher, he always plays down the powerhouse that he built and you guys built at Miami. And, Rico's always been extremely humble. That's one of the reasons why he's so well respected, and one of the reasons why we decided to take a chance on this little guy from Wexford back in.
You're not the only little guy, Toph.
I know. Maybe that's why we get along so well.
talk about powerhouses, because I remember Rico reaching out to us and saying, hey, I would love for you to bring your team to Oxford, Ohio, to help us with our grand opening of our new facility on campus. And and he says, and again, just killing us with kindness, you know, to be able to bring in one of the top programs in the country, a WCHA champion, a national champion, it would mean so much to our little program and our fans. And, you know, and I bought into all this crap. You know, and so we're kind of wandering, you know, we come into town, and, you know, myself and Steve Miller, who was on staff with us at DU at the time, and we had both been at, you know, part of a coaching staff at Miami at the same time. And I remember, you know, driving through Miami with the team on the team bus, driving through Oxford, I should say, and Killer pointing out all the different places, the restaurants and the bars and the different places that a lot of bodies were buried, as he used to say. But they killed us with kindness until the puck dropped on that Friday night of that grand opening, and then just killed us. Forget the kindness, just killed us. I mean, we were the sacrificial lambs. And I remember standing behind the bench, I don't know, halfway through the third period. The score may have been, I don't know, they had a 2, maybe 3 goal lead on us, but it could easily have been 6 or 7. I mean, we didn't have a chance. I was so impressed with not only how skilled his team played, but how well they played together. I mean, just so impressed with what he and his staff had built at Miami. And, you know, think to myself, okay, we're going to get beat. There's no other guy I want to have beat us than him. You know, I'm really amazed and proud of what he's accomplished, and never going to forgive him for what he's just done to us. But it was something I'll never forget, because it was something that was like, wow, this is way to go, Miami. You know, I know we're a pretty good team at Denver, and they, you know, they're way better. I was really impressed and proud, even to this day, to know what they've built, what Rico built and his staff built and his players built at Miami, because it's a special place. And certainly for them to be able to show what they've done over the years on a national level, can't take that away at all.
It's amazing stuff both of you guys have accomplished in your careers, for sure. And this has been honestly, as someone, as I almost consider myself a bystander here, just to have this conversation with the two of you guys and to see the respect that you have for each other. And you can tell that it goes very, very deep both ways. And you can tell there's a lot of history, a lot of really good memories, and a lot of respect for each of the people that you guys are. And it's been very, very cool over this past hour or so to be able to be witness to that. So that's something that's very special in this business, to be able to build. You guys talked about relationships in pretty much every question that was asked of you. And that's what it's all about. And being able to learn from you guys here today, for everybody that's going to watch this, to be able to learn, you know, just honestly based upon how you guys have treated each other and the relationship that you guys have, I think is so special and so cool. So thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your day to show us that and to talk some hockey with us. And I really, really appreciate it.
Well, Topher, it's been my pleasure, and keep coaching your kids hard.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Toph. Love you, buddy. And great job with Hockey Think Tank. I look forward to looking at seeing your tweets every morning and what you've been able to do. So good job.
Appreciate that. Love you too. Thank you for everything. And Coach, let's keep in touch with stuff, and more Zoom meetings for everybody. How about it?
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.